Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that demystifies business for artists. And today we have another returning guest. Today we have Amanda Meadows coming back to the program from Devastator Press. You might remember her episode with Jeffrey Golden. You can find it now if you haven't heard it at thebusinessofart.us/Devastator. So Amanda and Jeffrey are co-publishers of a small press dedicated to weird comedy books called Devastator Press. And when she was on the first time with Jeffrey, they talked about starting their company through anthologies. I actually met them when they were doing anthologies a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I can't believe this is our 8th year in business already. And they moved from doing anthologies into a full-line press in 2013. But I wanted to have her back on to talk specifically about anthologies because we have a new anthology out right now on Kickstarter called Monsters and Other Scary Shit. It's a 224-page monster anthology about monsters. 30 different creative teams, 47 total artists, including cover artists, with credits ranging from Boom, IDW, Oni, DC, Vertigo, Marvel, and a bunch of others. You can find it right now at monsteranthologycomic.com. It's $40 for the hardcover glossy art paper anthology, shipped to your door domestically, and you get a PDF and CBZ file included free of charge. Head on over to monsteranthologycomic.com and check it out today. It's pretty awesome. 30 different creative teams jamming out about their favorite things relating to monsters and other scary shit. All right, before I get on to the show, I have to get something off my chest. The audio from my side of this interview is fucking terrible this episode. And it's because, well, my normal recording apparatus failed me. We tried to record this through Skype. It was a no-go. So in a rush, I decided to try Zencastr. And without really thinking about it, assuming that they would default to my Yeti beautiful sounding microphone, I just recorded the episode. Didn't think about it. We were in a rush. Didn't have time to test the settings. Never tried Zencastr before. And Zencastr decided to default to the speakers in my computer. So my audio, not Amanda's, Amanda sounds fantastic, is fucking abysmal. Now we've done, I've recorded over 150 shows, and we've never had an audio issue before. So it was bound to come up. Luckily, no one gives a fuck what I have to say on these shows. This is all about the guest, and she sounds great. But I wanted to come and caveat that, end this episode, and say, I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. Luckily, Amanda sounds great. And luckily, the information that she provides is freaking brilliant. So I'm sorry, Amanda. I'm sorry, you, loyal viewer. But just be prepared when I come on the mic. I'm going to sound so fucking bad. The advice is great, though. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. So let's get on with it. No more bullshit, no more apologies. Let's just talk about anthologies. Take it away, Amanda. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
Hi. I'm passionate about books and making weird books. That's not super new if you've heard me on the podcast before, but that's kind of all I care about right now.
Yes, and you make your books have gotten somehow weirder since we last talked. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
And weirder. I mean, our motto is weird books for weird people, so I love weird.
Yay. Weird is good.
It is so good. So you were on the show around May time last year. Why don't you tell us, kind of catch us up, what's happened since like May June time frame up until now?
Sure. So we danced around the maypole once we did, and then after that, well, we were just in a lot of conventions, so that was like the end of crazy convention season. We did Phoenix Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con. Those are like two of the big ones that kind of close out the spring summer season, and then we had a bunch of really great books, including. I gotta look at my calendar because I'm one of those people whose calendar is a horrifying like spin art collage of like so many colors, just so many colors layered on top of each other. It's a terrifying schizophrenic flag of obligations. So I'm going back in time.
The one
This
I
is
remember
fun.
for sure is the one about the failed Disney, the
Oh
failed
yeah,
Disney one.
that was in September. Yeah, that's called Dream It, Screw It. That was written by my hilarious partner Jeffrey Golden, who is a full-on Disney file. He also writes for Disney. He writes for Disney Princess Comics for Joe Books. He's hilarious in those comics. And yeah, that came out in September. So like even before then, in May we had Stay at Home Scarface by Kitty Kyle from Mad Magazine, and in June we had Killing It: The Action Girl's Guide to Saving the World While Looking Hot by Joan Ford. And in July we had All the Feelings, hella dramatic monologues for thespians of a teen age. So it was just like book after book after book. And in August, we had a zine that was a bunch of our friends' dogs dressed up in historical costumes. Yeah, in September we had Dream It, Screw It. In October we had Toys for Cheap, our horrifying catalog of toys that should never be made or purchased. And in November was our longest book yet. It was a thriller parody by Ryan Sandoval, who's written for MTV and FX, and is one of the funniest people we know. It's a 200-page novel that is like a beat for beat parody of all of those airport thriller novels your dad reads on the toilet. Um, it's super great. It's called The Daddy Complex. I highly recommend getting it on Amazon. Yeah, it's just craziness has been happening. Like just yesterday, I think Kristen Shaw just like tweeted that she was loving The Daddy Complex. She was reading it. I'm like, oh my god, it's
Oh yeah.
super flattering and cool. Yeah, 2016 was like the longest and shortest year.
So I have a question for you. I know we're
Yeah.
talking about anthologies, but how the fuck do you publish so many books? Like I'm trying to publish 2 books a year, and it's killing me. Like I'm going way, and you like have a book a month.
Yeah, it's a book a month. Well, Jeffrey and I work really hard, and it took a lot of time to get to this point. This is we're entering our 8th year in operation as Devastator. So, we started out making 2 books a year, and it was a build a barn thing. There were 25 different contributors in each book, which was a lot of cat wrangling. And yeah, you kind of learn via the hardest possible thing you can do, which can be an anthology, particularly one that's top to bottom comedians, because comedians are late a lot, they're contrarian a lot, but it ends in a really amazing final product. So yeah, just doing a few years of that and finally feeling like we had that figured out led to us kind of every year having this like buildable goal of like more ambitious slates, zines, comics, novels, graphic driven books. We diversify. I mean, it's really important that every book that we put out is different. If we were doing the same thing every time, not only would it get repetitive, but it's actually harder because you're trying to do, especially with illustrated books, if every book that we did was the same level of intensity as, say, Stay at Home Scarface or Toys for Cheap, especially Toys for Cheap, because it's so much art, so many detailed illustrations, crammed into like 60 pages. We totally burn ourselves out. So, yeah, I think that the key is making new things, trying new formats, not, like being okay with doing simple things so that you have more time to do the complicated thing.
Yeah, I guess when I think about your slates, you do have they're all comedic in some way and weird, but they do have different levels of intensity. Like I'm thinking of the a 200-page novel versus doing the oh my god, I can't remember the name. I Don't Think You're a Racist book, where it's mostly like a picture and then one like statement on the other side.
Totally. And I'd say those books are actually the most deceptive. The graphic driven books like We Don't Think You're Racist. The easiest part of that book was writing the jokes. Robin and I spent, a total of maybe a couple of hours writing all those jokes. We still have spreadsheets of jokes that we haven't used. But the production is the hard part. It's the arranging of the photographs, casting the photographs, actually, getting a professional photographer to do the photos, setting the style so that all the photos are consistent and feel like they're in this same, like, hyper glossy but also like terrifying world. And yeah, so while writing that book was a lot easier, the production was a challenge. And the result is something that's so slick it looks very simple and easy. When you look at it, you're like, oh, this would take a couple hours to make. But it was all in the production of the book. It was all going into making it look the right way. And then some books are just all about the writing. So it's kind of this like reversal of responsibilities. If the writer has to do all of the elements of the book, that takes a lot more time than if you can delegate some tasks. Like, we hire a layout designer to make this book look a certain way, so that the author doesn't also have to do that. That would be extra work. It would take extra time. It would be a lot more draining. So just like trying to find the pipeline for each title. We have to sort of create a plan for each title so that the timeline doesn't get strained. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I guess, yeah, when I look back on, if someone told me 2 years ago you're going to do a 220-page anthology and like do all this else, I'd be like, no way. I guess it's just like little leveling up over time until you look back at it and go, well, I did 20 projects before, and that's how I kind of learned how to do. Like, now I can do it, but like, you couldn't just throw me in to where I am now 8 years ago. Like, I had to totally failed immediately because I had no experience doing this.
Absolutely. That's so much of it is just chipping away at the rock and, being adaptable, knowing when it's time to add to something that you're already working on, make it more of a challenge. You get cleverer as you go on.
Yeah, cleverer and more crafty. Do you think that the anthologies you were doing in the early years of Devastator kind of built your stable of writers when you started doing these new 12 projects a year? Is that kind of how it built over time?
Oh, absolutely. Our Devastator is definitely a community. A lot of us were already friends before we started the Devastator, and this was like a way of harnessing all of this talent that was in our friend group, was just because we were all comedy writers and we were also friends with a lot of artists, and it was like a great opportunity, and it made it a lot easier to start the Devastator because we just started with our friends and then went out and farmed out for people when we needed them, and they also became super important as time went on. So it just kind of snowballed with each book. We brought in new people, some who were friends of friends, some who were complete strangers who found our books in stores and were like, I need to find these people. How do I become a part of this? So at this point, I mean, yeah, it's like a couple of hundred people who are all kind of in this weird cloud of Devastator. I'd say by time we agreed to become a full line press in 2013, like early 2013, um, it was pretty easy to think like, oh, these are the people we're going to go to and ask for book ideas. Just the Devastator anthology zine staff, folks like Patrick Baker and Lynn Donahue and Asterios Kokonos, like these hilarious people who are already doing our like monthly meetings where we figured out what we were going to do for the next Devastator. We read each other's pieces and punched up each other's work. So yeah, we were already a tight knit group. So it made starting the press easier. And then with every year, we add new people to our list of folks who can pitch book and zine ideas. So yeah, we're growing every year and bringing in new voices and trying to make a funny book for every kind of weird person that exists.
Right.
That's really important to us. Trying to reflect as many worldviews and perspectives as possible.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. And that's what I found with my anthology. You know, when you're trying to get for my company, we do very few books a year, and it's very hard to, I don't want to say trust, but I'm going to say it besides another word, like trust someone to deliver on the thing that they say they're going to do. Like you might know them as funny, they may have one book out, but you're like, are they going to consistently deliver the thing that I want at a time? So I was able to, over the course of less than a year, go from 200 people that said they were interested to 60 stories that people said they were going to get in to 40 creative teams to 30 actual stories. And like those people who
Yeah.
actually delivered the stories, you're like, okay, like lots of people can be interested in a thing. These people actually like delivered a thing and delivered the thing that they said and the quality that they said and the time frame they're going to say. So I'm much more likely to like, even though I like all of these other people, these people I know will deliver when. So if they want to do a book, I'm much more likely to trust that book is going to get done.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a business, and why else would you be making a book than to put it into the book supply chain? You know, you need to get it done by a convention at the very least. If you're a small press without distribution, if you have distribution, your distributor, charges you a penalty if you're late on delivering a title. So that's like a pressure that we face now that we didn't have before. So we are very, very, very much strong believers in the three pointed sort of I forget what it's called. It's like the triumvirate of qualities in a contributor or an author or whatever you need to hire, that they give you consistently great work, that they are kind and easy to work with, and that they're on time. You can almost never get all three. So you have to dance around the circumstances of the project and the person that you're dealing with and try to figure out how you can get as close to all three as you can. But yeah, we're very much taskmasters when it comes to deadlines. It's tough. I mean, and we've never done open call for anything before too, so that kind of helps things a little bit. We have sort of a preliminary vetting process before someone gets the opportunity to even pitch to us, which makes it easier. Like it just means that there's a higher likelihood that the person who's pitching cares enough, that they've put enough thought into the idea of pitching to us before doing it, so that it's more likely that they're going to follow through. It's also a higher likelihood that they've like actually read the things that we've made in the past, so they like know what we're going for, what our goals are, what our tone is. So yeah, that's just kind of how we deal with it.
Yeah, I always, when people ask us about submissions in at cons or whatever, I say, well, here's the thing: is like I have a list of hundreds of creators I want to work with, and I have a list of dozens of creators who, so I have a list of hundreds of creators that I know and I want to work with, dozens of creators who I know are established who I would really love to work with, and like, if you want to get in, you have to pass those two layers for me to publish your book before someone else's thing. So I agree, like, to me there has to be a massive vetting process, which is why I love anthologies, because like it was a way for me to say, like, I'm gonna give you a chance, brother. And then, like, when they deliver, you're like, okay, cool. Like, I took a chance and you delivered. And when I said, I'll take a chance on you, and then they didn't get the pages that I was promised, or I needed an extension of a month or something like that, I was like, okay, I kind of understand, like, where in the process these people are. And, like, for me, I created a list of people who were like, if you want to pitch something, for sure, like, you're in already. Like, you kind of don't even have to have like a whole pitch together. You just tell me something that's funny and like, or weird or cool, and I'll probably approve it. As opposed to someone that I'm meeting at a convention for the first time, you have no idea who they are. We don't even have a
Right.
submission. We don't even have like my email's not even on my website. And people ask me, why is your email? Your email's not on your website. How do I submit something to you? And I go, exactly.
Oh, the aura of mystery. Yeah, we didn't used to have a page on submissions or anything on our website. What we did instead was we changed our contact page so that it was like, if you are trying to do this, here's who to email. If you're trying to do this, here's who to email. We ask if somebody is interested in pitching that they email us with a kind introduction and with links to their work, with their relevant work. If someone sends us a link to their screenplay, we know that they are not paying attention. So it's just like, what's the point? But if you send me links to your Shouts and Murmurs New Yorker piece, that's hilarious. That's great. That's like, okay, this is a person who gets what we're doing. Send us links to your Onion bylines and stuff. Then it's like it's a good omen. And then we respond. Like, we read people's work. We look at their samples. We look at their portfolios, and it takes time, which is why we have a submissions window every year instead of expecting to have, like, open, ongoing submissions year-round. It's just untenable. At a certain point, you're so busy that you put every submissions query on the back burner and you just never respond to them. We didn't want to be those people. So giving ourselves the deadline of having a submissions window every year ensures that before the submissions window, we've got to address all of the submissions queries we get. And we get like maybe a couple a month or so. It's not crazy. So it's just like, it adds up. So it's good to like make ourselves have an opportunity to respond to everybody.
No, that's so smart. If I ever expand to 12 books from 2, that's very good. That's a very good thought.
I mean, even if you expand to 4 or 5 books, it's good to have a window where you're taking in new proposal ideas, because then you can schedule your time a little easier. It's like, all right, well, this is the time that I'm going to decide what next year's slate will be, and then I can get working on production. It also like kind of makes our calendar a little cleaner, because we know that we've got to be done with this year's books before the deadline for next year's books ideas. So yeah, it's harder and easier at the same time.
Yes. So I want to make sure that we do this before you have to go. Do you have
Absolutely.
your 5 things that you
Oh
need to
yeah.
know before you or you learned from your anthology? I'll give you a couple of prompts. I know you emailed it to me. I wanted to be surprised by what they were, so
Oh
I didn't read
great.
them. Because what we're
Ooh.
gonna do is you're gonna do 1, and then we'll discuss a little bit, then 2 and 3 and 4, or whatever order you want to go into. But
Okay, great.
do you want to give us your first one?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these might be triggering or painful. Just generally painful. So the first thing is sloppy planning and infrastructure as a pitfall. In general, when starting an anthology, particularly if it's your first anthology, we went through this where you're like, oh shit, like what's our structure? Like what's our pipeline? You've got to build the pipe before you put shit through the pipe. And sometimes you get caught building the pipe as the shit's going down, and it's like a race against time to get the pipe laid and time for all the stuff to come through it. So usually you don't maybe you're missing like the process by which you're going to accept submissions. Like, do you have your timeline? Is everyone just emailing you random files? Like, are you getting RTFs and Word docs? Are you getting Google Docs, but also final drafts? Like, you need to have your criteria for submissions laid out and have maybe some kind of CMS. Like, how are you going to streamline the production? Are you going to use Slack? Are you going to use Bootcamp? Are you going to use Trello? I highly recommend using Trello because it is way freer than Slack. Though Slack is, I get how Slack could be more fun because it's a little chattier and there's more like plugins and stuff. Yeah, I highly recommend having a CMS so that you know what all of the projects are. You can more easily check in with everybody on their submissions. It just makes things a little tidier. How are you going to keep all the assets in order? Are you paying for a special Dropbox? Is it a patchwork system of like Google Drive and WeTransfer and other things? Are people like driving to your apartment with a thumb drive? Like, that stuff can get hectic, especially if everybody thinks that they're a special case and they can send you the thing that's easiest for them. I love to squelch that stuff whenever I can. I think it's just really important to sort of plan out what the infrastructure for putting together the anthology before you even open up for submissions, before you even announce the thing. It's just good to have that done. Stuff like the final files, like, are you telling everybody that they need to be a certain dimension? Like, do you have a Photoshop template that you could just give every creator so that they have no excuse to send you things the wrong size? Stuff like that.
Oh my God, that last point, like, I sent people a Kablam. So the easiest one to do, really, it's real simple. If you're doing like a regular size comic book, is like Kablam template. My friend Josh told me about this. Just like send a Kablam template. Like, I know it's not perfect, but like it's about as perfect as you can get for a comic anthology without having to go and like pull your hair out. I tested it against like 2 different things, but I sent the freaking template and I still got wrong size stuff. That's the big key that if you don't put it out front, which I didn't even have a submission like Google thing. I was submitting. I basically said, hey guys, I'm going to do a cool monster anthology called Monsters and Other Scary Shit. Like, you want to do that? Like, pitch me a thing. And like, I was getting emails and Facebook messages and calls. People were coming up to me at conventions. There was no like window, and I was like trying to manage into my own spreadsheet, and then I would approve things, and I would say you get 8 pages, and I would get back 10 or 4, and I'm like, and I get it back, and like some of them were RGB files, some of them were JPEG. Some people sent me just the PDF, so I really couldn't like do anything except try and pull them apart or ask them for different files when there were errors. This is so important because even when you're working with like your buddies and people that work in comics, and almost every single person in my anthology at least works in comics semi-professionally, if not professionally, and I was still getting I thought, oh well, everyone kind of has worked with a publisher or sent a file to a printer. They should kind of understand like what file I want if I send them the dimensions. Nope, that is a terrible assumption.
Yeah, my rule, and this is how I get like 80% consistent results from this, is to never assume anyone knows anything. I just don't. And I do that with, I've worked with people who are like amazing and I love and like looked up to before working with them. And even them, I'm like, these are the size dimensions. This is your deadline. We usually do like kind of a mini work order for every contributor or author or what have you before they start doing any work for us. After they sign the contract, we're like, here's the rundown. Here's the loose outline of what the thing is. Here's your specs, your final file specs. Here's your deadline. Here's all this stuff. And we do that for everybody, no matter who they are, whether they're our best friend from college or the big comics name we never thought we'd get but somehow did. So, yeah, I think that's just kind of a really key thing for people starting out to remember is like, nobody knows anything until they've given it to you correctly.
Yeah, and it's like I don't give this is not a failing on them. I find that this is a failing on me not being clear enough at the outset for all of these things because when I like it would have been horrific for me at the end of if I didn't send the people the final file size like 2 months early to get all these different file sizes and be like, yeah, this thing that you did, you got to go back and redo 12 pages of book now or not submit it. So, oh my God, that would have been horrible. So, yes, I totally agree. When I told people what the specs were, everybody was like, okay, cool. And that's the deadline? Cool, I can hit that. Cool. Then no one was like, oh my God, why are you putting a limit on me? I find that people like knowing what you expect, and the more you give them up front, the less they're surprised. And then when when they do something wrong, you're like, hey, remember when I told you to do that other thing in this document? They're like, oh shit, yeah, my bad. Like it ends up stopping more arguments than it has ever started for me.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, people want structure. They really want structure. We all do. Unless they're like a sociopath or something. So like the more railing you give them, the just easier the journey for them. And I think the next pitfall that I sort of have kind of falls into that a little bit as well. Loose curation can be a pitfall for anthologies. I personally believe an anthology is as good as its curation. You can have amazing gems, you can have like big stars in it, but if the stories, if the order of the stories don't flow right, or the colors, you didn't have like a clear explanation of like what the color parameters for everyone was, or if you didn't have like a basic aesthetic theme or palette or something that you're telling everybody to work off of, you might end up with the things not looking right in succession. They look amazing on their own, but all together you're like, what does this visually put together for the reader? So the book on the whole can feel less amazing sometimes. So I feel like there should be a baseline of art and writing quality that you're sticking to. And you want to nail down your criteria for submissions up front and be very transparent about those criteria, especially if you're open to the public, and you put that out there on like a big Facebook group or on a website or something. You want it to be very clear to people who may not know you or what you've done before, like what you're looking for. I think this is especially important for newcomers and beginners, because anthologies should be a place for newcomers and beginners to get their stuff seen. I think that's what they're best at sometimes, especially with these big Kickstarter anthologies that like, I don't know if you know Tanika Stotts and Sfei Monster and Shingyan Kaur, who started Beyond Press. They did this amazing and gorgeous queer fantasy anthology called Beyond. And when you look at it, every story flows into the next, even though they're made by completely different people and have completely different stories in them. Thematically, it's so tight, and all the creators in it feel like they're of the same level of ingeniousness and aesthetic qualities. So I think it's like really important to sort of put together your crew for the anthology in a way that makes everybody look good. And, you know, that's not something another person can dictate to the curator. It's really on them to be like, what's your vision? Here are the people who I think can serve that vision the best.
Right, for sure. I mean, I was talking with my friend Christine about this. She's done 3 anthologies this year, and that was one of her big takeaways. Was like, be better. Like, the more you can hone in on not just like sci-fi or monsters,
Right.
but also like monsters that are funny and in color, and this between these kind of like style ranges of these kind of comics, the more
Right.
you can curate it even to that level, the stronger it will be, and the more you'll be able to find an audience for it, the more you'll be able to like to sell it at the end of the day. Which, like you said, like at the end of the day, like this is all great. Everyone's putting their heart and soul into this anthology project, but like you have to sell it at the end of the day. And the looser that it is, and the more inconsistent it is around tone, theme, and style,
Yeah.
the harder it is to sell at the end of the day for someone, because they don't know what they're getting. Like, I like these 3 stories, but these like 20 I could do without, and these 4 I hated. Like, is that really worth $40? I don't think so.
Exactly. Yeah, I super agree. You don't want an anthology to feel like you've handed someone a bag of loose items. You know, you want it to feel like something that helped Jeffrey and I when we did the Devastators. For every issue had a theme, but as opposed to just like the one word theme, we had a thesis for each book. You know, for example, like we did a book that was like all like old school arcade game homage stuff, but the thesis was like, you know, sometimes our nostalgia is overboard, and the stuff that we're nostalgic for is not nearly as good as you remember it. You know, sometimes it's the time of your life that is what's coloring how important this nostalgic video game is for you. And so, yeah, that's like a shitty, less not well remembered version of the thesis we had, but that kind of helped hone in for the contributors. Like, okay, so like I need to take this angle when I pitch article ideas, story ideas, comic ideas for this book. It should all kind of have that feel. So it definitely helps focus the contributors, and honestly they like that stuff. It's so much easier to come up with an idea for an anthology if there's a thesis behind it. And when it comes to the art, if you're doing a comics anthology, of just like, you know, what's the palette, what's the look that you're going for, so that even though everyone's got a different drawing style, they can at least feel like they're a part of the same family of stories,
Right,
visually.
right, exactly. I mean, and like I do feel like the curation for the anthology is looser than most, because, but my thesis was, monsters are more than just horror, and I want to show the wide range of how monsters can be seen all throughout society, in between from fantasy, sci-fi, horror, then like even like we have a Cookie Monster story, all sorts of stuff, just like a jam on anthology. So like if I were to do it again, I would probably go and say these all need to be of this theme and have monsters in them, and just make it tighter. Because like you said, the tighter it is, the more you're able to say, yes, this is a story we definitely want that will make this anthology stronger. I don't know, it's on the fence. Can you go back and rework it? Or this is not right for me.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, I mean, we sort of built the system for the anthology series that we did, so that there were enough people that if everybody pitched a handful of things, like, you know, we'd reject about a third of the people that pitched to us. And then the rest, you know, they got like we picked the idea that they liked best. And when we commissioned the idea from the jump, like when we're saying, hey, we like this pitch for, this Dr. Do like story for the arcade issue, but like here's here's like what we'd like to see in your first draft, you know, like we like what you've pitched, because it was just like a little thumbnail description of what the basic premise and what maybe one of the jokes would be in the piece. And we'd, you know, give them a little bit of guidance for the first draft, and then we'd give them notes, and then they'd do a revision. And I think that's actually my next pitfall, which is sometimes there's a lack of guidance editorially. There's lots of different types of anthologies. There's lots of different styles of editing. You kind of need to decide for yourself before you start an anthology, like how hands-on you're going to be as an editor. If you want to do the kind of plug and play thing where you're like, whoever makes it by this deadline and fits my criteria and fits these specs is in, that's great. Then if you've put all of your criteria up there out front and it's transparent what being in the anthology is based on, then you won't have a lot of problems. But if you are going to have some filtering, if you do want to be able to give notes for people so that they make a revision before they continue, you kind of need to figure out how that's going to work for yourself and the contributors before you start, so that you don't end up in a situation where a contributor's like, here's my whole comic, well, see you later. And then you're like, wait a minute, all of page 2 is weird. Like, I think the dialogue here is wrong, or you've buried the lead here, or this joke doesn't work, or you went off game here, like in terms of plot. So that would be a surprise for them if they suddenly got like critique and they weren't expecting it. And that can lead to like lots of delays and hassles. So you should decide if you want to give people notes, then you should give everybody the opportunite to know that, like, hey, you're going to submit something, and then I'm going to give you some notes, and there'll be a revision. I might have no notes, or I might have some notes, or I might have a lot of notes. But you should know up front that there may be one extra revision before we finalize your piece. So yeah, I think that can prevent a lot of hassles down the road. And the thing that you mentioned before, Russell, just like, you know, someone submitting the thing and it's wrong, and you have to have them redo it, but there wasn't time built in for that. So now the anthology's late and you're delivering to your Kickstarter backers late. Like, that's like the number one reason these things deliver late, is because somebody down the line messed up their piece, or there was a dispute about an edit or something, and now everything else is waiting until that thing gets fixed. So it's important to build in that time for hand-holding, for revisions, for, you know, it takes time to read what people bring you and give them notes, you know?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Make sure you've built in that time.
Yep, for sure. And like, there's nothing worse than having a plug-and-play deadline where, like, hey man, if you get your story in by this deadline, you're in the book, and then getting a piece back and being like, fuck, that's not that great. All right, well, what am I going to do now? Like, they got the book in. This was the deadline that I set. So, like, it's in. And, like, luckily it didn't happen to this anthology, but I was fucking dreading it the whole time, because after the submission thing ended, like, they all got in and started working on their pages, and I was like, I wonder if I should have had a deadline. And some people did come to me and ask questions, but for the most part, a lot of this was just, okay, cool, do what you need. If you need me, I'm here. If you hit this deadline, you're in. If you don't, you're not. And then it was like, fuck, I hope they give me good pages instead of shitty ones. And, I mean, it ended up being great, but I can certainly see a scenario where that blows up in your face, especially if you're working with less seasoned professionals. But even seasoned professionals, like, everyone can use notes. All stories can get better with notes. Absolutely,
especially if the editor is practiced at giving notes, because there is an art to writing notes, and there's an art and finesse to receiving notes in a constructive way as well. And sometimes the less polished a professional your contributors may be, or yourself might be as a curator, there's going to be some stumbling, in trying to get notes across to people. I think the biggest tip I can give on that is if it sounds like a criticism without any suggestions, delete it. Don't send someone what you think of their piece if you don't have constructive notes for fixing the piece. Sometimes that requires even writing a little bit and saying, hey, well, here's an example, like here's an illustrative example of how I would fix this paragraph, or how I would fix this panel. Like, here's like a example. You don't have to use this, but here's an example of what I'm trying to get at here. So anytime you're giving notes to someone and you're reading it, ask yourself, would I be pissed off if I got this? It's hard to ask yourself that in the moment, especially if you're frustrated that someone gave you something that wasn't exactly what you imagined or what was agreed. But that's kind of the there's no real way to teach someone how to give or take notes, but that's kind of the best tip I can give.
For sure. I mean, you don't get subtlety from email. All you get are the words, and everyone interprets words in the worst way possible. I don't know any person who looks at words and goes, they probably didn't mean anything by that. Everybody super analyzes all of the words. So, in essence of time, let's move on to the next one. I believe you have 2 left.
Oh, absolutely. There are 2 left. So, these are a little more obvious. Zero retail marketing or publicity. That's like a really big pitfall. Just in general, and this is for like all small presses and for all like indie creators. But anthologies in particular, they don't exactly get star treatment from comics shops or indie bookstores even. They can be hard to sell unless there's some major internet juice or star power, or the theme and cover are so amazing that you find a champion at a store who's willing to take a chance and suggest it and recommend it to people. Otherwise, it's really hard to get someone to care. Even in this era where people are making these really awesome anthologies via Kickstarter, that's usually like the big hurrah they get is in the Kickstarter glow. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, now I've got an extra 1,000. What am I going to do with these? So you kind of have to be crafty and set a plan beyond the Kickstarter. So, are you going to have a buy-in program where all the contributors get X amount of copies to sell at their tables at conventions? Are you going to charge them wholesale, or is it going to be built in as part of their payment? I like the latter. If you're doing like a really big anthology and it's going on Kickstarter, that means the print has been mostly paid for. So you can maybe up your print run and give everybody a little bit of book. But beyond that, like if the people that are in your book are not doing conventions on their own, are you doing conventions? If so, how can you use every part of the convention to your advantage? I think we've talked about this before in the last episode that me and Jeffrey were on, but suggesting panels, doing roundtables, doing events at stores. Do you have money in the budget during your Kickstarter to maybe pay a publicist to put some juice behind it? There's a lot of like planning you've got to do for the afterlife of the book. That's the biggest challenge. Beyond making the book is once it's out, how to get people to care about it. How is it going to stay relevant? Because it's a real permanent object that's going to be around for a while, and hopefully it's not in your closet. Hopefully it's on other people's shelves and tables.
Yes, for sure. I mean, this goes to any book. This isn't just an anthology thing.
Exactly. It's especially problematic for anthologies because of the lack of love they get from the retail space. Like, even if you have a distributor, they're like, we don't want that many of this anthology. We're not sure how many it's gonna sell. So, unless you've got some really good champions in the retail world, if you got the Valkyries on your side, for example, then you've got to come up with a plan. You've got to like get out there and make sure that you know some retailers, maybe consult some retailers when you're in the early stages of the anthology, before you even announce it, before you have a whole book. Like, hey, like what about this appeals to you? What doesn't appeal to you? Sometimes it's good to get that feedback in advance.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that what you lack in distributor support, and frankly, most of the people that listen to this probably aren't going to have a distributor, especially for their anthology book. What you lack in support, you make up for. You can make up for. I wouldn't say you necessarily make up for it. You make up for in the fact that for my anthology, there's 46 total creators plus a cover artist. So there's 47 total people that can work together to mobilize to push a book. But
absolutely.
But that still means you have to mobilize, and this goes back to the planning part of it. It's like,
exactly. What's your plan for getting your contributors to care enough to push beyond just the first few months? That's something that like is taken for granted. Like, you kind of know that everyone in the book is going to do a bunch of tweets and Facebook posts about the anthology for the first couple months, and then after that, it's like they've moved on to whatever other thing. It's not like. This is where, like, the anthology can sometimes be a hindrance in terms of psychology for the contributor. It's if they're being paid, it's like a one-time fee. So as a working artist or writer, you're like, oh, well, I've done that, and I've given it enough attention in its release. Now it's time for me to move on to my other thing. It's not like they're getting royalties, and it's not like they have a vested stake in its success the way that you do as the curator and publisher and person who's going to be getting the majority of the sales when they're sold. So you kind of have to figure out, like, what else about this anthology is marketable. It's got to be a whole package, as opposed to like, I'm going to put the brunt of the promotion on the contributors, because that just doesn't work for very long.
Right, exactly. That is absolutely true. But one of the great things about having an anthology is that if you're working as a artist who does a lot of conventions, generally when you start, you're doing like, you have $5 things on your table, and the anthology is a great way to pretty much immediately have a $20 thing on your table, which can actually start making you money at a convention instead of these little $5 things that generally are, or at least usually are much harder to monetize.
Oh yeah, so true. I think if you're at a Comic-Con, it's very hard to make a profit if you have to sell $5 or fewer, or cheaper things. You just have to sell so many more things just to break even. I think it was something we talked about a little bit last time, that you do need to have price diversity on your table. You also don't want to have like a bunch of $5 things and then suddenly a $20 thing, because now you've primed your customer for thinking, oh, well, that's an outlier. Like, most of the things on this table are $5. Why is there this $20 thing? So you also like need to sort of plan out your steps, have something at every price point. So like, it'd be great if you had a nice entry level book that was at $10. And then you had something with a little bit more, maybe it has full color or something, and that's $15. And then you have like a really big, massive book for $20. Then the customer, none of this is very rational. Price theory is just about like how customers see stuff the time they're staring at it. And they're just trying to piece together a narrative of your table based on like the half second that they've spent looking at it. So the more well-rounded your price points are, the easier it will be to get someone to land on something. But that was a funny tangent, but it's something that we learned from just like, lots of trial and error. We spent about a year and a half having almost all of our books at $10, and we had one $15 book, and that $15 book sold the slowest. because it was weird that there was a $15 book. And it took a while for us to realize that. And then once we had more $15 books on the table, we were selling $15 books all the time. But the fact that there was only one surrounded by $10 books made the $15 book look like an exorbitant, crazy, like, splash of cash.
Oh yeah, man. I took all the I took all the 1 and 5 and eventually very soon $10 books off my table. So the lowest price point at my table is 20 and will soon be 30. And like, it's amazing. Like, if you just don't have those things on your table, like, people go, okay, the minus price point, the lowest price point on this table is $10. Just like when you go to Ruth Chris and you see a $20 burger, like, people don't mind the $20 burger at Ruth Chris, but when you go to McDonald's and it's a $5 burger, like, what the fuck is this $5 burger for, man? Like, what is a $5 or $10 burger doing at this McDonald's? So, like, it is all, a lot of it, it's a weird pricing bias.
Yeah, it's called embedding. If you've already established a standard, then anything that deviates from that standard just a little bit seems like, oh, I don't want to take the chance. So yeah, definitely. Our average, we because we make comedy books, we try our best to keep them comedy prices, which is like in the $5 to $20 range. Which luckily in our case in the past couple of years encourages multiples. That's something I learned like when I was in college and working in retail was like multiples. And someone picks up a $5 zine and then they pick up a $10 book and they're like, oh man. And then they see another zine and then they see this other book and they're like, oh man, how do I choose? And then when you tell them the total, they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll get all of these. And so our average transaction now is probably like 2 or 3 books when it used to be 1 at a time. Everybody who came at our table years ago, if they bought anything, they'd buy one thing. They're like, I'm going to try this one and see if it's not garbage. And then maybe I'll see you in a year at the next convention. Now it's a lot easier for people to pick up multiple things and go, I'm going to take these home and read them. And and I'll see you next year. But next year, it'll probably be another transaction of multiple items. Yeah. So it's nice.
That's what happens when you have a nice like brand that makes good things and that people know and like, because like I have people come to my shows and go, hey, what's new? And I'm like, these 3, and they'd be like, I want them. I'm like, okay, you want to know? But I like, nope, just give them, and whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me. Just I want these things. I'm like, okay, there you go. You can have those things. Because like eventually, when someone sees you at enough shows or for a long enough period of time, like they might not buy 12 things, if they see you once a year, but they're much more likely to go, okay, I read 3 of your things, I like 3 of your things, you've got 2 more things, I want those things. Because I think what people don't think about a lot when they're trying to do, to do cons or pricing is, it is very easy to find content online. But it's very, 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 very hard to find content you like online. There's free content for days, but it's almost all garbage. So when people find something they like, I find they're even more likely to like hang on to that shit and pay a premium now than they were 20 years ago, because they know just how easy it is to make garbage.
Right. Like, it's kind of like when somebody points at a water fountain, but somebody is selling water bottles right next to it. Like, enough people are going to buy the bottled water because it's like, here's a unit. Like, it feels neat and clean. It's nice to know that somebody did the work for you, and that's why, like, on the internet, the game is curation and aggregation. The creators get very little for their work, but the aggregators somehow get a lot. But at least with an anthology model in a real print context, you have the opportunity to build something where the creators do get something out of it. So yeah. So my last one. Yeah, my last pitfall is going to be controversial. My 5th possible pitfall for people making anthologies is the urge to make more anthologies. I don't know. Like, if you've made a few, maybe it's time to take a break from them and do a different thing, try a new format. Because anthologies are challenging to put together, and the challenge, can sometimes grow from anthology to anthology, especially if you're trying to put together a series, like the Flight series or something, for example, that people loved. But at the end of the day, those things are untenable. After a few, I think I'm trying to think of an example of one that was amazing and still had to end.
Like Pop Gun.
Yeah, Pop Gun was great, but it couldn't go on forever, because what you hope should happen does happen, hopefully, where you've made an anthology so that you can get to a point where enough people have seen your work that they'll ask you to do a full-length thing, or you'll get a job at another publishing house, or now you've been acquired to write for a book for another publisher that, they put you on this new DC title or something. Who knows? The hope is that you move on to the next challenge from an anthology, that it's a way to get started, and then you're rolling, and you're oh, maybe I'll go back to the anthology when I've got another good idea for one. But sometimes you want to take a moment and let the success of an anthology maybe lead you to something else, so that you don't exhaust yourself, because they can be exhausting.
They can. I'm going to come at this at a different side of it, though.
Sure.
Because I have done my own personal, only me books. Well, not only me, obviously. I had editors and writers and artists. But it was mostly me working for years doing full-length books, pretty much myself. And so the anthology to me was a great way to be I have this list of, 300 creators I'd love to work with, and no chance I'm ever going to get to that. I mean, you just multiply 4 times the next 30 years of my career and 120 books,
right.
and there's just no, and I'm probably going to do my own books too. There's just no fucking way that I'm going to get to all of these creators. So for me, the anthology was a great way to say, I have a pipeline, I have a bunch of creators. It'd be nice to do a nice jam book about something that I love, like monsters or something else, and then let a bunch of creators that I love kind of jam out on it. So I do think that, if you're starting on the anthology side of it, or you're only doing anthologies, DJ and Mark did what, 1,200 total pages. Mark told me of that Pop Gun anthology.
Right,
so,
right.
Fuck ton of anthology, but
it's a lot, yeah.
But on the other hand, there's a magic to me about an anthology after doing a book for 2 years and it taking average of 2 years to complete 2 graphic novels, to be able to say, okay, submissions are closed in July, pages are due November 1st, and within 4 months, you have a 200-page anthology. And you're what?
Oh yeah,
what?
I mean, it's
what?
one of the. Yeah, it's one of the great things about anthologies. One of the many great things of anthologies. And again, I don't think this is not a universally applicable piece of advice. This depends on everybody's career. What I'm thinking about more is I'm speaking as someone who has put together 13 anthologies, and at a point you're oh, these anthologies gave me an idea for a thing that should be its own full-length thing. We, in the course of making 13 issues of the Devastator series, we filled the board with ideas that were too big to fit into a Devastator book as a 2 to 5 page entry. And so we were ready. We were ready to make a bunch of standalone things. You could be coming at it from the opposite direction. You could have done a bunch of standalone big things that were huge endeavors, and now you want to go to some shorter things that are more about management than creation. It really just depends on where you're coming from and where you're started and where you're headed. But if you have a goal for where you're headed, there's a chance that the anthology is a step in that direction, but it's probably not going to be the only button you mash, to get there. So it just you just have to sort of look at your trajectory and think okay, where how long does it make sense for me to make anthologies? Should I take a break and do another project, then come back to anthologies? Because, we locked ourselves into like a series that, could have just gone on forever unless we decided, here's where it should end and here's why, and this is what it turned into. Like, we managed to turn the anthology series into a publishing house. If we hadn't done the Devastator anthology series, we wouldn't have been as successful as a full-line publisher. This was a necessary step for us to get to where we are now, for which I'm eternally grateful. But I also wouldn't have gotten here if I didn't stop making anthologies.
Right. No, I mean,
you know what I mean?
It completely makes sense. I coming from more of a writer perspective, even though I'm a writer who does also publish things. I put off
exactly
doing,
same.
Yeah, I took off doing small projects for a long time, and I only wanted to do short, long form stuff. So like I wrote 5 novels and like 3 full length and 4 we're in process of like my 4th full length graphic novel, and like that shit takes a long time to finish. On some level, I guess what I'm saying is like I don't think you would disagree with this, but I don't know, maybe you will. There's a place for the short form quick win. And there's
absolutely.
And I'm working with a couple on my anthology piece, Go Fish. My artist is like, we should make this into like a big thing, and I'm like, man, I kind of just wanted to do a small thing that was like its own thing, and like it's not that it's like I think it's a great piece, but like that's why I loved being and doing other people's anthologies too, because it's like this is too small. I guess it's almost the exact opposite thing that you said. It's like, this piece is too small for like a big novel. I like it, but like I don't like it enough to spend the next 3 years of my life making it.
Exactly. And there should be space for all of those things if you believe in them. You should create the container for the small things, and you should create a container for the big thing. It's about where do all of those containers fit in the cupboard? That's kind of how I think about it. It's like I want to see the trees for the forest, and then I also want to see the forest for the trees. Now that can be applied to Devastator Press's year slate, where we've got a zine that's literally just a mom's email to her daughter showing her the profiles of men that she wants to date, and it's all about just like the like horror of your divorced mom talking to you about her love life. And it's super simple. Like, the engine of the zine, it's 12 pages, and it's just like an ugly old dude's face and the mom's notes, and it's like it was the easiest zine in the world, but it's also like one of the funniest things. And then we also have a super complicated 240-page book that is compiling images, like photos, drawings, journal entries. It's like a scrapbook that's all being put together in an elaborate way so that it feels authentic while still being really cool to look at, because it's all fitting into an overarching narrative that spans years. And like that's also coming out this year. So like, we now in the context of our slate, we've got our quick hits and our things that are just obviously funny and super surface level and easy to do, and then we have our super intricate things, then we have our in between things, so like that's how I've applied my experience putting together anthologies into a full line press. And like I had to have done that before I could get to this point. So I think that's kind of what I'm saying is like, ask yourself like what your goal is, like where do you want to be in 5 years, and where does the anthology fit into that, so that when it's time to start making them, to stop making them,
Yeah, for sure. And that is a great place, and the place we can agree to end. I have one final question for you in 2 parts.
Yes.
Which is, if you were planning an anthology today, what is the one thing that you absolutely would do, and what is the one thing you absolutely would never do again if you were planning another anthology?
Oh man, this is tough. The one thing I absolutely would do is use Trello. Because we actually didn't use Trello when we were making the anthology series. Because this was like the late aughts into the early teens, and Slack didn't exist yet, and we were just kind of doing everything via email and Google Docs and Dropbox, and Calendar, and just trying to mesh all of that together so that it all worked and correlated and there were no like conflicts. I would absolutely use Trello to manage everything from now on, especially in anthology. It makes it so much easier because then the contributors can actually talk to each other too. You can make a community board where they can all kind of compare notes and talk about things, and they can ask you questions in real time, and it's a lot easier for you to answer them instead of like, all right, let me open up my inbox, weed through a bunch of garbage to find the one email that I am trying to answer. So yeah, a long way of saying that's one thing I would absolutely do.
I'm gonna do that next time because I used Facebook groups this time and it was great. But I think
Trello... It's more for socializing. It can be hard to harness a conversation and get it into like a structure, like towards like a goal or coming to a conclusion. People just want to keep talking, and that can be difficult if you want to just get something done.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Trello is a must-do the next time I'm collaborating with a bunch of people.
Absolutely. Okay. If you want to use Slack, Slack's obviously the best, but Trello is like just as good as Slack. And the thing I wouldn't do, gosh, I'm not sure. Something I definitely wouldn't do. Ugh. No. I wouldn't expect them. I wouldn't ride contributors so hard on promoting unless I had some kind of goal for them to achieve also. Like something I would do a little bit more to come up with like a reason for them to promote beyond the first few months. Because with the Devastator series, it just kind of worked out that by time the chatter died down for one, the next one was already about to come out. But, if I was doing one standalone anthology, I'd want to find a way to give people an incentive. So I would probably give people a royalty that was more of like a bonus royalty setup, as opposed to like a straight percentage, because how do you split, 15% royalty 100 ways, you know what I mean? But like how can you make sure people get something for their efforts of hounding their fans and network to buy the anthology?
Love it. Okay, I have 1 minute. Tell people where they can find you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Cool. Well, I'm Amanda Meadows. I had a little bit of a cold today, so sorry if I sounded weird. But I could be found on Twitter at Amandonium. And the Devastator Press, all the books and stuff that I've been talking about this whole time, you can find them at Get Devastated. Myself and Jeffrey are the publishers, and we do most of the tweeting as well. You can also subscribe to our list, which is all of the Devastator creators who are currently on Twitter. I highly recommend subscribing to that list because there's some funny-ass gems in there. You can get all of our books at bookstores across the country, Amazon, and you could get everything, including our zines, at devastatorpress.com. We also have an amazing elite society for our best of people called Skull and Books. It's a secret society for people who love funny books as much as we do. For $10 a month, you get everything we make. You get a care package in the mail from us each month with the newest book or zine, plus random goodies when you least expect it. And we usually have like a little Christmas gift too. So you could go to devastatorpress.com/skull if you want to find out more about that. You can jump in and jump out whenever you like. You get everything we make up until you cancel. That's where you can find us.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for having me, Russell.
So that was Amanda Meadows coming on to talk about anthologies. I gotta be honest, man, that episode was great, but I'm so fucking pissed about the audio. I'm so pissed off. But I'll get over it because at the end of the day, Amanda gave great advice. I mean, it was fantastic. All the advice from all these creators who are coming out of Talk Anthologies are the exact types of advice that kind of wish I had when I started planning my anthology. So I hope you guys are getting a lot out of it. And please, if you are, head on over and say thank you to Amanda and buy some of their books. Subscribe to their awesome care package because, like, that is fucking awesome. I'm probably going to sign up myself because I love their stuff. And if you like this show, head on over to rate us on iTunes. And if you want to check out a dope-ass anthology that I'm running right now on Kickstarter, head on over to monsteranthologycomic.com. Check out our amazing 224-page monster anthology from 30 creative teams with credits ranging from Marvel, Vertigo, IDW, Boom, Oni, and more, all jamming out about their favorite monsters. It's $40, shipped right to your door in the US, and you get a print, a digital download print, and the PDF and CBZ files of the book included, which are usually a $20 add-on. Again, all shipped to your door. That being said, I'm going to get out of here, ladies and germs. Head on over to monsteranthologycomic.com to check out our anthology. And I will talk to you later, creators and wannabes. Have a great day.